A peaceful family picnic. A racist ranger with a badge and a prejudice. A beautiful lakeside spot. That was supposed to be paradise. He thought he was evicting trespassers. He never imagined he was standing on their front porch. And the deed was already in their name. Meet Ranger Bob Higgins. 50s, beer belly. A face permanently fixed in a scowl. He saw his park as his personal kingdom, a place where his word was law. And he had a particular dislike for people who didn't look like they belonged in his pristine wilderness. To him, a black family in a new SUV was automatically suspicious. Ranger Higgins sitting in his truck, sipping coffee, watching families through binoculars. He sneers as a black family's SUV drives by. Now meet the Carter family. David and Maya Carter, both 38. Their 2 kids, Jasmine, 10, and Jordan, 8. David, a visionary tech entrepreneur. Maya, a brilliant environmental lawyer. After a decade of hard work, they'd achieved their dream, buying 20 acres of pristine lakefront property to build a legacy home. Today was their first visit, a celebration, a chance to picnic on the land they now owned. They spread their blanket under a giant oak tree, the kids running toward the water's edge. They never saw the green pickup truck rumbling down the dirt road, carrying the man who would try to destroy their dream. The truck screeched to a halt, spraying gravel. Ranger Higgins stepped out, adjusting his belt, his badge gleaming in the sun. All right, folks, picnic's over. Pack it up. David Carter stood, smiling warmly. Good afternoon, officer. Is there a problem? This is a day use area. No picnicking allowed, Higgins said, his eyes scanning their expensive cooler, their new folding chairs. Maya stepped forward, her lawyer senses tingling. I think there's been a mistake. We're not in the public day use area. We're on private property. Higgins let out a short, harsh laugh. Private? Lady, this is all state land for 10 miles. You're trespassing. Now, I won't ask again. David kept his cool. Sir, I assure you, we own this land. We closed on it last week. Higgins's face turned red. He didn't like being contradicted. Show me the permit. Show me the proof. The deed is right here, Maya said, reaching for a bag. But Higgins had already made up his mind. He saw educated black people talking back to him, and his pride couldn't take it. He pulled out his ticket book. I don't need to see anything. You're getting a citation for trespassing and littering. He pointed to a juice box Jordan had left on the blanket. Higgins's face contorted with anger. Maya's hand froze, reaching for a bag. The children looked on, scared. Littering? David's voice rose. That's our son's juice box. We were going to pick it up. Tell it to the judge, Higgins sneered, scribbling the ticket. Now, I need to see all your IDs. And then you're going to follow me off this property. Maya's eyes narrowed. You have no right to demand our IDs. You have no probable cause. We are on our own land. Higgins stepped closer, invading their space. His voice dropped to a menacing growl. On my land, you follow my rules. And my rule is that you people always need to be checked. Now, hand over the IDs before I make this a whole lot worse. The phrase, you people, hung in the air like poison gas. David Carter's friendly demeanor vanished. He moved to stand between Higgins and his family. You need to leave. Now. Higgins's face purple with rage. No one ever stood up to him. He reached for the radio on his shoulder. Dispatch, this is Higgins. I've got a 10 to 96 at Lakeview Point. For individuals trespassing non-compliant, requesting backup. This was escalating fast. Maya quickly pulled out her phone and started recording. Ranger Higgins, you're currently on private property owned by David and Maya Carter. You've been informed of this. You are now falsely reporting crime. This is being recorded. Higgins, enraged by the camera, made his biggest mistake. He lunged for Maya's phone. Give me that. David instinctively blocked him. There was a shove. Higgins stumbled back. He looked down at his uniform as if it had been desecrated. That's an assault on a law enforcement officer, he yelled, fumbling for his handcuffs. You're all under arrest. The children started to cry. It was chaos. But as Higgins advanced, a new sound cut through the tension. The deep, powerful thrum of a helicopter. Getting closer. Fast. Everyone looked up. A sleek, black helicopter with no markings descended, hovering low over the meadow. The rotor wash whipped the grass into a frenzy. Higgins stared dumbfounded. What in the... The helicopter door slid open. A man in an expensive suit, holding a briefcase, rappelled down a rope ladder. He landed smoothly and walked straight toward Higgins, ignoring the Ranger completely. Mr. and Mrs. Carter? I'm Jonathan Reed from the title company. My apologies for the dramatic entrance. I was in the area and heard the commotion on the scanner. He turned to Ranger Higgins, his expression cold and professional. Officer, you are in violation of Code 602 of the State Penal Code, trespassing on enclosed cultivated land. I suggest you leave immediately before my clients press charges. Higgins sputtered. Who the hell are you? This is state land. Jonathan Reed opened his briefcase and pulled out a large, ornate document. He unrolled it, holding it up for Higgins to see. It was the land deed, the official survey map, and a letter from the governor's office approving the land transfer. The owners' names were clear, David and Maya Carter. Higgins's face went from red to white to a sickly shade of green. His knees buckled slightly. He wasn't just wrong. He was finished. David Carter stepped forward, his voice quiet but carrying the weight of the law. You tried to evict my family from our own home, he said, but the eviction notice, he pointed to Higgins's truck, is for you. The deed held up, the names clear. Higgins's face a mass of horror and shame. The Carter family, standing together, united and strong. He thought he was the law, but the real owners just landed in a helicopter, and the paperwork is about to bury him. The deed is signed. The Ranger is stunned, but the battle for the land is just beginning. A racist with a badge doesn't give up easily. He's about to call in reinforcements and uncover a secret that will shock everyone. Ranger Higgins staring at the deed in horror. The Carter family standing firm. The lawyer from the helicopter holding a briefcase. Ranger Higgins stumbled backward, his face pale. This can't be right, he stammered. There's been a mistake. This land has been protected state property for 50 years. Jonathan Reed, the title company lawyer, didn't blink. The transfer was approved by the State Land Commission last month. All paperwork is in order. You're the one making the mistake, officer. But Higgins wasn't listening. His pride was wounded. He grabbed his radio, his voice shaking with fury. Dispatch! I need backup immediately. Lake Viewpoint. We got squatters with forged documents. David Carter stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. Call your supervisor. Call the governor's office if you have to, but you will not disrespect my family on our own property. Just then, 2 more park ranger trucks came speeding down the dirt road, kicking up dust. Higgins's backup had arrived. The odds were shifting. The new rangers jumped out, hands on their weapons. The situation was tense. But Maya Carter, the environmental lawyer, saw something the others didn't. She was staring at an old, weathered sign half hidden in the bushes near the oak tree. It was faded, but the words were still visible. Carter Homestead, established 1889. Her eyes widened. David, she whispered, pulling out her phone. The original survey map, look. She pulled up an old historical document on her screen. The land grant showed the same plot of land, granted to Elijah and Sarah Carter in 1889. Their ancestors. This wasn't just land they bought. This was land that had been stolen from their family generations ago through fraudulent claims, the very same claims that designated it state land. They hadn't just bought property. They had reclaimed their heritage. Maya held up her phone to the new rangers. This land was stolen from our family over 100 years ago. We didn't just buy it. We reclaimed what was always ours. The rangers looked uncertain, glancing at Higgins. Higgins laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. Ancient history. That doesn't change the fact that you're trespassing on state-managed land right now. The lead backup ranger, a younger woman named Evans, spoke up. Bob, maybe we should just call this in. Verify the documents. But Higgins was too far gone. No, they're bluffing. I want them arrested. Now! He reached for David's arm. It was a final straw. Suddenly, a new voice boomed across the meadow. Ranger Higgins, stand down. Everyone turned. A tall, silver-haired man in a state police uniform was marching toward them, his face like thunder. It was Captain Miller, head of the entire region's park law enforcement. Higgins froze. Captain, thank God. These people are... I know exactly what they are, Captain Miller snapped. They're the legal owners of this land. And you, Higgins, are an embarrassment to this department. Captain Miller turned to the Carters, his expression apologetic. Mr. and Mrs. Carter, I cannot apologize enough. We received the land transfer paperwork weeks ago, but it seems Ranger Higgins neglected his updates. He shot a withering look at Higgins, who seemed to shrink under his gaze. But as Captain Miller spoke, Maya noticed something strange. Higgins wasn't looking at the captain. He was staring past him, toward the tree line, with a look of pure terror. She followed his gaze. A sleek black sedan was parked deep in the shadows, almost invisible. A man in a dark suit leaned against it, watching. He nodded slowly at Higgins, then got in the car and drove away. Higgins looked like he'd seen a ghost. Captain Miller continued, "We'll leave you to enjoy your property. Higgins, you're suspended. Effective immediately." But Higgins didn't seem to hear. He was still staring at the spot where the sedan had been. David noticed it too. "Who was that?" he asked quietly. Higgins finally met his eyes, his face ashen. "You have no idea what you stumbled into," he whispered. "This land, it wasn't just stolen from your family." He swallowed hard. It was protected for a reason. Before anyone could react, Higgins turned and ran to his truck, speeding away in a cloud of dust, ignoring his suspension. Captain Miller looked stunned. What in the world was that about? But Maya was already on her phone, calling a contact at the State Historical Society. "I need everything you have on the Carter homestead land claims from the 1890s. And I need to know why the state was so determined to keep this land protected." An hour later, her phone buzzed with an email. She opened it, her eyes scanning quickly. She gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "David," she said, her voice trembling. "It wasn't just about stealing our land." She showed him the screen. It was a scanned document from 1892, a mining assay report. The land wasn't valuable for timber or farming. It sat on top of the largest rare earth mineral deposit in the state. Minerals crucial for modern technology, worth billions. The state didn't protect it for conservation. They protected it to keep the secret. And as Maya read this, a drone buzzed high overhead. Its camera pointed directly at them. They fought for their heritage. They won back their land. But the treasure beneath it has just made them targets. The dirt holds a secret. The trees hide a threat. The Carter family just won a battle against a racist ranger, only to start a war with a billion-dollar shadow corporation. And the first shot is about to be fired. A glint of sunlight on a rifle scope hidden in pine branches. The Carter family, unaware, looking at Maya's phone. David Carter's blood ran cold as he read the assay report on Maya's phone. Neodymium, dysprosium, billions of dollars worth, he whispered, his tech entrepreneur mind calculating the staggering value. This isn't just our home. It's a strategic national resource. Captain Miller, the park police captain, peered over his shoulder, his face grim. "I've heard rumors for years. A protected geological site. Now I understand that protection has nothing to do with conservation." The buzz of the drone grew louder, circling directly overhead like a vulture. "We need to leave. Now," Maya said, her lawyer instinct screaming danger. She shoved the phone into her pocket and grabbed her children's hands. But as they turned toward their SUV, a shot rang out. Crack! It wasn't aimed at them. It hit the ground near their feet, kicking up dirt. A warning shot. "Get down!" Captain Miller yelled, drawing his service weapon and pushing the family behind the picnic table. Another shot zinged off the grill nearby. The shooter was hurting them, cutting off their escape route to the vehicle. "They don't want to kill us!" David realized, shielding his children. They want to trap us, to scare us into selling. From the tree line, a voice amplified by a bullhorn echoed across the meadow. The land is contaminated. State emergency. You are ordered to remain where you are for decontamination. It was a lie, a pretext to isolate them. Captain Miller keyed his radio. Dispatch, this is Miller. Shots fired at Lakeview Point. The officer needs assistance. Static hissed back. Then a calm, distorted voice replied, all units are otherwise engaged, Captain. Stand by. Their communications were jammed. They were on their own. As the family crouched behind a table, Jasmine, their 10-year-old daughter, tugged on David's sleeve. Daddy, the old well. She pointed to a circle of stones nearly swallowed by weeds near the giant oak tree. Grandpa's story said there was a storm cellar there, from the old homestead. It was a desperate gamble, but staying in the open was suicide. On my signal, run for the well, David commanded. Captain Miller provided covering fire, shooting toward the tree line to force the sniper to keep his head down. The family sprinted across the open ground. Maya pried at the heavy, rusted metal hatch set into the stones. It groaned open, revealing a dark, steep staircase descending into the earth. They scrambled down, pulling the hatch shut just as another bullet ricocheted off the iron lid. They were safe, for now, but they were also trapped. David used his phone's flashlight to illuminate the small, earth-walled cellar. It was filled with decaying crates and old tools. But on one wall, protected by a sheet of glass, was a framed, handwritten document. The ink was faded, but the words were clear. It was a last will and testament from Elijah Carter, dated 1898. To my descendants, it began, if you are reading this, they have finally come for the treasure under the soil. Do not let them have it. This land is our legacy, not their prize. The law will not help you, for the law is in their pocket. But truth is your weapon. The full assay map is hidden in the cornerstone of the old chimney. Maya's eyes met David's. They had more than a geological report. They had the original map, the proof that the mining company and the state had known about this for over a century and had conspired to steal it. Suddenly, a new sound came from outside. Not gunshots, but the roar of heavy machinery. Bulldozers, excavators. David risked a glance through a crack in the hatch. 3 massive bulldozers were lined up at the edge of the property, their engines rumbling. Men in hard hats and tactical gear stood nearby. A man in a pristine white hard hat stepped forward, speaking into a bullhorn. It was the same man from a black sedan. Mr. and Mrs. Carter, I am Silas Thorne, CEO of Omnicorp Resources. You are sitting on a hazardous geological anomaly. The state has granted us an emergency permit to begin immediate excavation for public safety. Come out peacefully, and we will discuss fair compensation. It was a lie. They were going to bulldoze the land and them and claim it was an accident. They were out of time. Just as despair began to set in, Maya's phone, which had had no signal, buzzed once. A single text message from an unknown number. The cavalry is coming. Keep your heads down. Before she could process it, a new sound filled the air. A deep, rhythmic thumping growing steadily louder. Thump, 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 thump. David looked up through the crack again. His eyes widened in disbelief. Silas Thorne and his men were also looking up, their faces shocked. Swooping down over the treetops were 2 news helicopters, their cameras clearly visible, and behind them, 3 state police helicopters. But that wasn't what made David's heart stop. Flying lower than the rest was a single, unmarked black helicopter, and leaning out the open door, holding a high-powered rifle, was Ranger Bob Higgins. But he wasn't aiming at the Carter family. He was aiming his rifle directly at Silas Thorne. Visual, the look of shock on Silas Thorne's face. Ranger Higgins in the helicopter door, rifle aimed. The Carter family was huddled in the dark cellar. He tried to evict them. Now he's their only hope. But whose side is he really on? The final stand for the Carter homestead begins now. A single rifle shot echoes, then the roar of helicopter blades. A tense, pulsating beat begins. The bullet finds its mark. but not in flesh. The racist ranger has become an unlikely ally, but his shot is just the opening move in a high-stakes game where the Carter family are the pawns, and the man pulling the strings has one last brutal play, a bullet ripping through the bullhorn in Silas Thorne's hand. Higgins perched in the helicopter, rifle smoking, Thorne's face contorted in fury. Silas Thorne dropped the shattered bullhorn, his hand stinging. He looked up at Higgins with pure hatred. The corporate mercenaries raised their weapons, but hesitated. The news helicopters were broadcasting live. This was now a public spectacle. Inside the bunker, David watched, stunned. Higgins? Why? Maya, ever the strategist, understood. He's not doing this for us. Thorne was going to silence him. Too. This is self-preservation. From the helicopter, Higgins yelled over the rotor wash, his voice amplified by a loudspeaker. Thorne, the game's over. The state police have the assay map. The governor is disavowing the emergency permit. It was a bluff, but a brilliant one. The state police helicopters began landing, officers swarming out. The corporate bulldozers ground to a halt. The media cameras ate it up. Thorne was cornered, but not defeated. A slick, predatory smile spread across his face. He raised his hands in a gesture of surrender. "A misunderstanding, officers," he shouted. "We were acting on flawed data. Our apologies to the Carter family." But as he spoke, he made a subtle hand signal to a man standing near one of the bulldozers. The man nodded and slipped away into the woods. Captain Miller, now empowered by the arriving state police, moved to arrest Thorne. "Silas Thorne, you're under arrest for conspiracy, coercion, and endangerment." Thorne didn't resist. He kept his eyes locked on Carter's bunker. "You think you've won? You only have the land. I have the system. And the system always wins." As Thorne was led away in handcuffs, the Carter family emerged cautiously from the bunker. It felt like a victory. The news cameras swarmed them, but Maya felt chill. Thorne's threat felt too specific. The system always wins. Her phone buzzed. It was Jonathan Reed, the title lawyer. He sounded panicked. "Maya, I just got a call from the State Land Commission. They're filing an injunction. They claim the original 1890s land grant to your ancestors was fraudulent. They're contesting your deed." Maya's blood ran cold. This was Thorne's real move. He wasn't fighting them with bullets. He was fighting them with centuries-old bureaucracy. "The hearing is in 48 hours, Jonathan said. "If they win, the land reverts to the state due to the historical fraud, and the state can then legally lease the mineral rights to Omnicorp." The victory had vanished. They had to prove their ancestral claim was legitimate. Their only hope was the original map hidden in the old chimney. But the chimney was a pile of rubble near the oak tree. As they started digging through the stones, Ranger Higgins approached, his posture defeated. I owe you an apology. Thorne had dirt on me. Bad debts. He owned me. David didn't look at him. Help us find a map. It's the only thing that can stop this." They dug frantically. Finally, Jasmine's small hands pulled a rusted metal box from the rubble. Inside, protected by oilcloth, was the original detailed assay map from 1892, signed by the surveyor, and a handwritten note. The state assayer, James McCullough, was bribed to falsify the initial report. "This is a true survey. They will try to erase us. Do not let them." Elijah Carter. They had the proof. The conspiracy went back to the beginning. That night, as the family prepared for the court battle, a car quietly pulled up to their temporary trailer. A tall, distinguished black man in his 60s got out. He introduced himself as Judge William Bennett. "I saw the news," he said, his voice deep and resonant. "I'm presiding over your case tomorrow. I can't discuss it, but I knew your great-great-grandfather, Elijah. My great-grandfather was his lawyer. We have a shared history of fighting this kind of theft." He handed Maya a thick, old file. "This is my ancestor's personal journal. It details the entire bribery scheme. It's not admissible in court, but will tell you exactly where to look for evidence that is." It was a risky, possibly unethical, move, but it was a thread of hope. Maya stayed up all night, Reading the journal by flashlight, the details were astounding. It named names, described meetings. The corruption was deep and historic. According to the journal, the bribed assayer, James McCullough, had a crisis of conscience. He buried a sealed confession and the real mineral samples in a time capsule under the courthouse where their hearing would be held tomorrow. They had less than 12 hours to find a century-old time capsule buried under a secure building. As the sun began to rise, David shook her awake, his face pale. He pointed to the news on his phone. The headline screamed, "Breaking. Judge Bennett recuses himself from Carter case due to potential bias." A new judge had been appointed, a judge known for his close ties to major mining corporations. The system had just changed referee. The shocking headline on a phone screen. Maya's face, etched with exhaustion and determination, looking at the courthouse in the distance. They have the proof. They have the truth. But the courthouse is a fortress, and the clock is ticking down to defeat. Sound. A loud gavel bangs. A clock ticks frantically, then resolves into a steady, determined heartbeat. A powerful, emotional score swells. The courthouse is a fortress. The judge is an enemy. The system is rigged. But the Carter family has a weapon the corrupt have forgotten. A century of truth waiting underground. The imposing stone courthouse. Maya Carter holding the old journal, her face a mask of fierce determination. They had 8 hours until the hearing. The new judge, a notoriously corrupt man named Judge Whitaker, would surely rule against them. Their only hope was a time capsule. "It's impossible," David said, staring at the fortified courthouse. "We can't just dig up the foundation." But Maya was already scanning the journal. "We don't have to. McCullough's journal says it's in the heart of the blind lady. It's a riddle. Jasmine, their 10-year-old, looked at a picture of the courthouse on her tablet. Mom, the statue." On the courthouse lawn stood a statue of Lady Justice. But unlike most, this one was blindfolded with a thick metal band. "The heart of the blind lady," Maya whispered. The time capsule wasn't under the building. It was inside the statue's hollow base. At 3 a.m., under the cover of darkness, the family executed their desperate plan. While David and Captain Miller created a distraction by setting off a car alarm 2 blocks away, Maya and a surprisingly agile Ranger Higgins approached the statue. Using tools from the old homestead, they carefully pried a loose stone from the base. Inside was a rusted metal box, just as the journal promised. Back in their trailer, they opened it. Inside were the real mineral samples, glowing faintly, and a handwritten confession from James McCullough, detailing the bribe from the state and the mining barons of the 1890s. The proof was undeniable. The courtroom was packed. Judge Whitaker scowled down, eager to dismiss the case. OmniCorp's slick lawyer presented his argument. The state's claim of ancestral fraud is clear. The land must be returned. When it was Maya's turn, she didn't approach the bench. She walked to the center of the room, holding the metal box. "Your Honor, the state claims our deed is fraudulent, but the real fraud was committed by the state itself." She opened the box, holding up the confession. This is a sworn testimony of State Assayer James McCullough, admitting he was bribed to falsify the original survey and hide the mineral wealth. "The land was stolen from my family. We didn't just buy it back, we reclaimed stolen property." The courtroom erupted. Judge Whitaker banged his gavel, his face purple with rage. "This is inadmissible. Hearsay from a dead man." But as the judge spoke, the doors at the back of the courtroom swung open. Every head turned. Standing, there was the state's attorney general, followed by a team of federal investigators. "Your Honor," the AG said, her voice ringing with authority, "this evidence is more than admissible. It's the key to the largest public corruption case in this state's history. This hearing is adjourned. Judge Whitaker, you are under investigation for your dealings with OmniCorp." The system, faced with irrefutable truth, had begun to purge itself. The news cameras captured it all. 1 year later, the Carter homestead was no longer a dusty plot of land. It was the site of the Elijah Carter Legacy Foundation, a state-of-the-art research center focused on sustainable mining and land reclamation, owned and run by the community. Ranger Higgins, having testified against corruption, found a new purpose as a head of security for the Foundation, finally protecting the land he once wrongly policed. The family stood under their oak tree, watching Jasmine and Jordan play by the lake. The deed was finally, unquestionably, theirs. The Carter family, standing together on their land, looking out at the sunset over the lake. They fought with papers when met with prejudice. They fought with truth when faced with lies. They fought with legacy when threatened with erasure, because the deepest roots aren't measured in years, but in the courage it takes to stand your ground. Final thoughts. They tried to erase U.S. from the land. Instead, we became its guardians. The Carter family,